Is this you? You're watching a video about starters and all they say is, uh-oh, the gym types don't look good for grass. This is why grass starters are terrible. Thanks for watching. I'll be honest with you, I do not care for an analysis that has no data. If you can't prove what you say, then there's no value in it. But then, how do you prove a Pokemon's worth? Let me offer you a very simple thought. If you have to be a higher level to win a battle than another Pokemon that's doing the same battle, then you must be weaker, or at least a worse matchup against those Pokemon. That's a reasonable statement, right? Well, today, instead of asking, can this Pokemon beat this battle with this arbitrary maximum level, we'll ask, what level do you need? I will play through Pokemon SoulSilver 3 times, once for each starter. In all trainer battles, I will use only one Pokemon from the relevant evolution line. If there's a double battle, then it'll be 2 Pokemon instead, but neither will be allowed to faint. I can catch other Pokemon for purposes outside of battling, like breeding. When a battle is won, the Pokemon is given a score based on their level. The score will be the level they started the battle at, plus the level they ended the battle at after gaining the experience from the final KO, divided by 2. The goal for each starter is to have the lowest score at the end of the game, which means they will have to win battles with the lowest levels that they can manage. To do that, I will make use of all resources the game provides at the given point in the game's story. I can breed Pokemon to have advantageous IVs. I can use X items. All sorts of event content are also on the table, though they will be used strictly as they would be on one single save file, as will everything else. If I have only a limited quantity of something, I'll have to actually ration its use throughout the playthrough. This won't really matter for TMs because they're actually really easy to get through breeding. The only things that are off limits are trading Pokemon from another game, unless it's for a trade evolution, the Winner's Path Pokewalker course until I've earned 8 badges, and a handful of moves if learned by TM. Additionally, we can only use 5 bag items per battle. In the interest of convenience, fairness, and generally keeping as much value in the video as possible, the initial starters I use before I can access the daycare will be edited to have 15 in all of their IVs and a neutral nature, which is as close to perfectly average as a Pokemon can be without favoring any stat. The Pokemon I breed will be edited at birth to have a nature I prefer and a custom IV spread which will total to 93, which is exactly half of the total you would get if a Pokemon had perfect IVs, making it the statistically most likely total. EVs will be set as well, with close attention given to make sure the stats are actually possible given the Pokemon's level. Since this idea is obviously similar to golf, I thought I'd lean into that a bit more and have a par system. An enemy trainer's par will be the average level of their Pokemon rounding up to the next integer. The levels of all of my Pokemon, even ones not used in battle, may only go up to a certain limit, which will be the highest par out of all the battles we've faced so far. If I'm not able to defeat a trainer with my Pokemon at the level cap, then they may go over, but I'll have to accept the highest involved starting level as the Pokemon's own. So imagine Whitney's battle, which has a par of 18, which would be our new level cap. If Chikorita can't do it starting at level 18, it'll try it again at 19. If I breed Leaf Storm onto Chikorita from a level 47 Victory Bell, then I will have to actually start the battle with that Meganium at level 47, because 47 is over the level cap. If I breed Reflect from a level 17 Chikorita, that's totally fine and the new Chikorita can be whatever level it needs to be, because 17 is below the level cap. I can already imagine you have a few questions about this. I'll answer some right now. Also, I've left out a lot of caveats for brevity's sake. If you want to know every detail, I have a 5-page document in the description. Why does the score involve the level the Pokemon ends the battle at? Isn't that pointless? It is true that any 2 Pokemon will gain the same amount of experience from KOing the same Pokemon, but not all Pokemon level up at the same rate. There are, in fact, 6 different rates. When a Pokemon levels up during a battle, something which will happen basically every single battle, its attacking moves become more powerful, not just from the increased stats, but also because the level itself is used in the damage calculation, and they may also learn new moves. These things may play a role in how the rest of the fight goes. A Pokemon that levels up more often would therefore have a small advantage, so I think those levels ought to be recorded in the score. Also, a Pokemon that's closer to leveling up will be more likely to level up during the fight. If we only look at the starting levels, it would become optimal to always, keyword always, have your Pokemon be 1 experience point away from leveling up, which I just don't really like. The experience gained from the final KO doesn't indicate how a Pokemon performs in that battle, so why include it? Not all Pokemon reward the same amount of experience, and the order in which Pokemon are battled can vary depending on the Pokemon we're playing with. If we don't include the last experience gain, then two Pokemon may end up with different scores because of that. This is unfair to some Pokemon. What if a level 1 Chikorita had a focus band and kept getting perfect RNG to defeat Lance with only Leech Seed? Luck is everywhere in Pokemon. You can't truly remove RNG from Pokemon or you'd end up with a very different game. When you're trying to find the bare minimum levels needed to beat trainers in a way like this, even an unaided crit at the wrong time or the AI doing something unexpected can end an attempt. There's even some RNG in what move the trainer AI uses. Strategies that rely on luck, along with ones that are not as luck dependent, will be penalized for failing via experience. Experience will come naturally from a Pokemon KOing at least one of the Pokemon it's fighting against. If the Pokemon loses the battle before getting even one KO, or my strategy relies on items I have a very limited quantity of, then a save state will be loaded and the Pokemon will be forced to KO one nearby wild Pokemon before attempting the battle again. Experience will add up and eventually raise the Pokemon to new levels, where the strategy will become more feasible or maybe even irrelevant as some new strategy becomes possible. Okay, I think that'll be enough explanation for now. Let's start the game, Mez. The first rival battle is okay to lose. The game will progress on regardless of the battle's outcome, so it does not count for score. Next up is youngster Mikey with a par of 3. All 3 starters easily win with a score of 5.5, which is the lowest they could possibly get. Because our starter has to absorb all the experience, we're going to be above par for a lot of the early game, whether we need it or not. Chikorita has a defensive advantage against grass types, so Sprout Tower is not much trouble. Totodile takes an actually significant amount of damage from Vine Whip, so we have to heal often, but we get through all the same. Totodile learns Rage here, but with how short the battles are, it's not really relevant, at least not yet. Cyndaquil gets through just as good as Chikorita until it learns Ember at level 10, at which point it will one-hit the final 3 level 6 and 7 Bellsprout it fights instead of 3-hitting when Vine Whip is doing pathetic damage, so maybe you save 1 potion over Chikorita. Elder Lee's Hoot Hoot has Peck, so obviously that's a problem for Chikorita, but it's not really that much damage when you're level 11, which again is the lowest level we could be at this point. If things go bad with Hypnosis, there's plenty of potions to spare and we can poison Hoothoot to keep doing damage while sleeping. For Totodile, stick with Tackle on the Bellsprout and use Water Gun on Hoothoot. Not hard at all. As for Cyndaquil, just Ember all the way through. Falkner is where the trouble begins. Our moveset is Tackle, Synthesis, Razor Leaf, and Poison Powder. Growl is the wrong choice in my opinion because Pidgeotto has both a physical and special move. The special move is more powerful, so that's what he'll use most of the time. On occasion though, he will use Tackle, so we'd like to avoid disincentivizing his AI from that. We'd rather take a Tackle than a Gust. Razor Leaf can get more damage in than our Tackle when Pidgeotto uses Roost, and Poison means he will be roosting more than you'd think. Synthesis is also not very relevant because a potion will still heal more at this point in the game, but if the situation allows, it does let us save potions. I use an X accuracy on turn 1, which you can pick up in Sprout Tower. This will counteract a single sand attack from Pidgey. I Poison Powder Pidgeotto as soon as I can to make him start using Roost, which buys me some precious time to heal and get damage in. Chikorita can survive a critical hit Gust from full health. There's no reason Chikorita can't do this at level 12, but we had some bad luck and because of the forced experience gain mentioned earlier, we end up leveling up during the battle whereas the other two did not. Totodile's attacks were surprisingly weak, so this battle turned out to be very similar to Chikorita's fight. A lot of potions and Leers were needed. In hindsight, I probably could have used Rage to good effect, but at the time I was still thinking it worked like it did in Generation 2. Cyndaquil had it the easiest. It still needed some potions, but yeah, it still got there. Getting a burn with Ember helps tremendously. After this battle, we get the Togepi egg. Togepi can learn Rock Smash, and smashing rocks can net us quite a few items and a lot of money. Breakable rocks respawn by simply leaving an area and coming back, so we can get as much money as we want, which means we can get whatever we want from our mom as well, so don't be surprised if I use something you consider a late game item or have a ton of potions in a battle. Let me say that again. This is where you get infinite money, and it's not even that unreasonable when a max ether sells for 1,000 Poké Dollars. All 3 Poké Starters easily take care of the Rocket Poké Grunts at Slowpoke Pokewell, given that they're grossly overleveled. Cyndaquil also evolves after the first Poké Battle. Chikorita gets the win on Proton at level 15, but just barely. It takes a good amount of healing to do. Or Coughing can just miss a lot, that'll work too. We delay Chikorita's evolution by 1 level, instead evolving after defeating Bugcatcher Benny so we can learn Reflect 1 level sooner. The double battle with the twins can be skipped by simply only having 1 Pokemon in your Poké Party. Bayleaf can manage Bugsy. First, we'll hold a Silk Scarf bought by our mom so our tackles hit a little harder. Then we need 3 X defenses. 1 comes from Union Cave and 2 from the suburban area Pokewalker course. To keep Pokewalker courses from totally ruining the early game, I decided that I can only get dowsing machine items from them 1 time plus an extra time for each badge. Also very important is poisoning Scyther quickly. She goes Leer twice and we use all of our X defenses. Then she goes U-turn but doesn't get a crit, so we live. Kakuna is simple enough to knock out, and we intentionally finish her off with low health to try to bait Scyther to go straight for the kill again. On the turn Scyther comes back in, we use a super potion, expecting an instant U-turn, but for whatever reason, Scyther never goes U-turn. In this case, we just KO Scyther as soon as possible. By this point, I would have used my 5th bag item, an antidote, to heal the poison from Kakuna, but we were very lucky and never got poisoned. Metapod is no threat at all. This fight is pretty much free for Totodile thanks to Rage. In Gen 4, when it says the Rage is building, that really just means your attack stat went up. It does not reset when you stop using Rage, and you can still build Rage while using bag items if Rage was Totodile's most recent move. Once our attack is maxed out, Bite tears up the entire enemy team. Obviously, Quilava blazes through the whole gym effortlessly. One more battle between us and the daycare. So now there's a Ghastly. Poison Powder is useless because Ghastly is a poison type, and Tackle and Cut are too because it's also a ghost type. I forgot Razor Leaf to learn Reflect. This means I have to use, dear God, Bullet Seed. To make my chances a bit better, I decided to employ a Pachirisu, which you can get from the Rally Pokewalker course. This Pachirisu has the ability Pickup. Every time we KO a wild Pokemon with Pachirisu in our party once it is level 11, there's a 0.1% chance it finds a King's Rock, which will help Bullet Seed immensely as there's a separate 10% chance to flinch for every hit. My main worry is Ghastly because Curse is pretty much game over. No flinch, but also no curse, so everything's okay. Zubat can be taken care of with just Tackle. For some reason, our rival likes to show us mercy sometimes and use everything except Ember, so Bayleaf somehow pulls it off fairly easily. I don't know what he's thinking here, but it's not a fluke. I've seen it happen multiple times. In any case, only 1 X special defense is all you need to make Ember into a 3-hit. Croconaw outspeeds and 1-hits Ghastly with Bite. Bite also gets us some flinches against Bayleaf, preventing him from setting up. Zubat is a 2-hit. Quilava just has to hope Ghastly doesn't go Curse turn 1 because Ember is a 2-hit. Fortunately, it's Mean Look turn 1. Croconaw is kept in check with Sunny Day, which can be obtained from the Blue Lake Pokewalker course. Zubat is again a 2-hit. We arrive at the daycare, and this is where things started going off the rails. When I started this video, there was no rule against this set of moves, bag items had no restrictions, and I was not being very mindful about possibly creating impossible movesets. This was the case until the mid-game when I lost my mind from boredom because almost every battle was being done at like level 6 with Attract and Double Team and a million X items. As much as I'd like to redo every one of those battles, there were about 30 of them that had to get axed, 90 for all 3, and that took months. I will only be counting the major battles for the mid-game, which have all been redone. Anyway, now that we can breed Pokemon, and with all of the things you can get in Goldenrod City, our options explode. Our Pokemon will now have IVs, EVs, and Nature however we want, with a limit of 93 IVs total, and our move pools become much larger. Ditto can be found on the same route as the daycare. Whitney's main threat is Stomp from Miltank. We have to optimize our stats to be able to survive 2 stomps from full health, otherwise we'll be stuck healing every turn just to survive the next stomp. You could try to skirt around this by relying on something like Paralysis or Misses, but when we only have 5 bag items to work with, it's not a great idea. Turning enemy attacks into 3 hits usually sets a lower bound for every Pokemon's level, but it's far from everything because you can only maintain alternating between healing and attacking for so long before you run out the 5 bag item limit. Whitney's Pokemon are all physical, aside from Clefairy's Metronome possibly calling a special move, so our stats are invested in mainly HP and speed with a bit in defense, and just in case there's a special move, we have Light Screen, which is a TM from the department store. I decide to keep rocking the King's Rock Bullet Seed and add on Leech Seed. Both Bullet Seed and Leech Seed can be bred onto Chikorita from an Execute, which can be found in many locations by headbutting trees. And to round out the moveset is Swords Dance, which is a TM we can get from the Game Corner. Our speed stat has been chosen so that once we're level 14, 1x speed is enough to outspeed Miltank. We actually start at level 13 and the experience from Clefairy will tip us over to level 14. In case you're wondering, yes, you can get this EV spread well before level 13 by KOing low-level wild Pokemon and using EXP shares, which we can obtain renewably from the lottery corner to spread the experience out to other Pokemon. Remember that Goldenrod is also when you get the Macho Brace, so most EVs can be acquired extremely efficiently. Okay, we're ready to battle. My first Leech Seed misses, but Double Slap is really weak, so that's fine. Clefairy uses Mimic to copy Leech Seed, which is good because it didn't copy Swords Dance and Leech Seed doesn't work on grass types anyway. I set up Swords Dance, Light Screen, an X Speed, and a dire hit. Unfortunately, Clefairy rolls Air Cutter just before I'm ready to KO it, so I heal, meaning I'll only have 2 bag items to spare for Miltank. Not good. Okay, really not good. It's a tense negotiation, but after several minutes, tons of crits, flinches, and milk drinks, we whittle Miltank down to nothing, with Miltank almost never going on the offensive. Totodile is mostly the same idea, except we use Bite to attack and Scary Face to outspeed Miltank. Miltank gets us low and then sees the kill with Rollout, so she goes for it. Rollout means we're almost certainly getting KO'd, but Totodile clutches up with 2 Bite flinches. Quilava has to rely a lot on Smokescreen. Even though Clefairy will copy Smokescreen with Mimic, it doesn't matter because it'll be too inaccurate to hit. Double Kicks for Clefairy and Fire Blast for Miltank with the hopes of getting a burn. Well, whatever. With Whitney defeated, we can buy a King's Rock on Sunday at the Pokeathlon Dome, so in case you didn't like how I got the first one, there you go. However, it would come at the cost of having to battle either this guy, or this guy. We can backtrack and reach the Sudowoodo from the east side to avoid fighting any of those guys. For the rival battle in Ecruteak City, Chikorita can't just use King's Rock and Bullet Seed again because Ghastly changed its nature to be plus speed, so we'd have to start the battle at level 16 with a Bayleaf to move first. I set up Substitute turn 1. This will make all of Ghastly's moves fail aside from Lick. If we get paralyzed from Lick or confused from Confuse Ray, our held Lumberry will take care of it. If he uses Mean Look, we obviously don't care. That means we just need him to not use Curse on turn 1 because he will outspeed. Once we have it set up, he'll almost never use Lick, so we're free to set up with Swords Dance and an X Speed. If he broke our Substitute now, we'd still be safe from Curse because we'll outspeed to set it back up. Then Chikorita goes completely insane with Razor Leaf. 2 hit on Ghastly, 1 being a crit, 3 hit on Zubat with 1 crit. Zubat could break our sub easily, but it just keeps going supersonic. Quilava 2 hit with a crit, and Magnemite crit 1 hit. For Totodile, I do the same strategy but throw in a Mud Sport, which can be learned from Wooper found on Route 32. Ice Fang 1 hits Ghastly. Bayleaf tries to poison us, which fails. Magnemite and Zubat also accomplish nothing. Quilava is mostly the same as the others, so not much to say. With Morty, or technically Medium Edith, our level cap surpasses 20, so now we can have level 21 Pokemon with Pickup find full restores renewably. Morty only uses the Ghastly line, and we've already seen how everyone deals with Ghastly, so there's not much to be said. Everyone ends the battle at level 18, but Chikorita starts it at level 12, Totodile at 13, and Quilava at 14. Funny how that works. This is when Johto starts getting non-linear. Currently, there are no more gyms accessible until I go beat a single Rocket Grunt. After that, I can use Surf, which means 3 gyms simultaneously become available in any order I want, and there is a bit of a question to be asked about which one should be taken on first. Maybe if I do the higher par battles first, the other ones will be easier due to the higher level cap, or maybe it won't. Maybe I'll just end up with a worse score because I'm doing the battles leading up to that without access to certain things. This question ultimately comes down to the individual Pokemon, and I imagine it could potentially be a very time-consuming problem to tackle. To make this easier for myself, I'm going to consider it a rule, at least for this video, that I must defeat gym leaders and all of the trainers necessary to reach them in the order presented on the trainer card screen. That means we're setting off for Chuck. Surf also means that we can now catch Smeargle. Smeargle's signature move sketch lets it permanently learn any move and then pass it down through breeding, as long as it can find a Pokemon to sketch the move from. This most directly helps Cyndaquil because they both share the field egg group. The last 3 battles have had a lot of uncertainty. Whitney using Metronome, Silver and Morty using Curse, and even more with Morty's Gengar possibly dropping our special defense with Shadow Ball. That uncertainty makes it impossible to optimize our stats to a degree I find satisfying, but that changes with Chuck. Chuck's lead is a Primeape that uses Focus Punch and Double Team. Our stats are optimized for Focus Punch to only be a 2-hit, not a 3-hit. And by only a 2-hit, I mean I don't care as long as we survive it. With that much bulk, Rock Slide looks like it should be a 4-hit after Leech Seed recovery, so we're not very worried about that. If at any point Focus Punch lands, our extremely low health will bait Rock Slide on the turn we heal, and regardless of what happens then, we'll be able to stop Focus Punch on the turn after with Magical Leaf. Defeating Primeape is therefore almost certain. For Poliwrath, I bring along Sunny Day and Solar Beam to do a bit more damage. Croconaw is much the same story, except Magical Leaf is replaced with Aerial Ace, which can be bred through this chain you see here. In case you're wondering, you can't get the TM for Aerial Ace until you defeat Claire, so this is your only option. Quilava outspeeds and one-hits Primeape with Extrasensory and then does the same to Poliwrath, though only because of a crit. Had this not worked, Quilava would instead be running a very defensive build starting at level 31. Not that that's much better than 29. After curing Amphi, we gain access to the Safari Zone without having to fight a single trainer along the way. The Safari Zone may prove useful because the wide variety of Pokemon in it could be a significant help in finding breeding chains for certain moves. Bayleaf has a thrilling time with Steelix. Steelix has massive defense, so any +6 physical attack will do about a third, same as an unboosted special attack. We prime Steelix with a Leech Seed and a Razor Leaf before he does the worst possible thing, Screech. With -2 defense, Iron-Tail can do up to 85 damage, so I decide I'll bank on a miss, and it has to be a miss because that's our last bag item. And it works out. We use Counter to KO Steelix while avoiding a Hyper Potion from Jasmine. Croconaw would take a lot of damage from Thunderbolt if not for Mudsport. The Magnemite are not threatening at all once Thunderbolt is a 3-hit, and they're both 1-hits with Brick Break. Steelix takes a few hits, but goes down eventually. Quilava can take care of the Magnemite easily with Dig, but we burn stall Steelix, with Dig being used to avoid some hits and rack up more chip. And now comes the red Gyarados. You can just run from it and it counts as defeating it. If you have any trouble, you can use a Smoke Ball or Pokédoll. We count that as no points scored at all, just like we did with the Cherry Grove rival battle. I can tell that you're a trainer with considerable skill. Petrel and Ariana in the Team Rocket HQ are so weak that it's honestly a bit dubious to call them major battles, but I guess. Our main concern for Petrel is surviving self-destruct from coughing. Bayleaf avoids it with Substitute, Totodile gets a lucky Ice Fang freeze to 2-hit, and Quilava just burns him to hell with Sunny Day Fire Blast. All 3 of them tied. Against Ariana, Lance's Dragonite will be doing most of the work. The problem? He's really stupid. He prefers to use Fly, which is slow and means we're going to be doubled up on a lot. It doesn't matter what attack he uses, because basically anything will work fine given that he's level 40, and yet he insists on using Fly like 90% of the time. The attempt I first recorded had Drowsy disabling Dragonite's Fly, causing him to spam Thunder and hit every single one. I felt kind of bad about how lucky that was, so here's a more normal attempt. Drowsy uses Hypnosis, so we end up sleeping for a good portion of the fight. Dragonite decides to KO Drowsy and Grimer first, who are both owned by the Grunt, so Ariana's 3 Pokemon will be fought 1v2. Arbok prefers to target Chikorita, so we have to keep healing and can't contribute much. I know Dragonite is about to outspeed and one-hit Arbok with Fly, so I take the opportunity to Leech Seed Dragonite, which will give me some very good recovery. Dragonite cooks Murkrow with a single Thunder, and then all that's left is Gloom. I use Sweet Scent on it to ensure Fly lands. I was planning to use it earlier, but Drowsy messed that up. Totodile had one successful attempt starting at level 10, but I didn't record it. When trying to get another, I could not, and had to settle for level 14 on a retry after an unfortunate crit from Gloom that broke through my Rindoberry. I set up Rain Dance turn 1 so that Thunder will always hit, if Dragonite ever feels like going for it. Whenever I have nothing to do, I use Dig to avoid hits. Murkrow comes out, so finally that Rain Dance is gonna pay off. Why? And then he goes Thunder after the rain stops and Twister would have guaranteed the kill. And then he does it again on Gloom, which doesn't even KO. Fine, you want to use Thunder so bad? Here's Rain again. I hate you. Cyndaquil's plan, if possible, is to burn Dragonite to weaken Fly. This ended up not happening because Arbok has Glare and paralyzed Dragonite first, so Cyndaquil just kinda chills and uses Dig. Price's Seal is weak and easy for Bayleaf to set up on. Seal sets up Hail at the last moment, which we very much have to avoid because Piloswine has Snowcloak and Blizzard will 2-hit. Since we go into Dewgong with a substitute up, we spam substitute to wait out the Hail. And by a miracle, we get our last substitute up with 1 HP to spare. On the turn we heal, Dewgong thankfully goes Ice Shard, leaving the sub intact so we have full health going into Piloswine. Blizzard does 2/3 and Razorleaf cleanly KOs, probably only due to Overgrow. Had Dewgong broken the sub earlier, we still had 3 bag items left to use, meaning 3 chances to heal, meaning 4 chances to buy a turn by Piloswine using Hail or Mud Bomb, or missing Blizzard. Totodile is good in the Ice-type gym, to no one's surprise. It's another typical sweep for Totodile, this time using Brick Break and Aqua Jet. When Piloswine is low, you might expect Price to heal, but he doesn't because he already used his Hyper Potion on Seal, and he seems to always save his full restore for his final Pokemon, whichever one that may be, which was Dewgong in this case. It may be an Ice-type gym, but Quilava has significant trouble. Thick Fat means Dewgong resists fire and Seal quad resists. And then there's Mud Bomb from Piloswine. We keep using Brick Break on Seal as it keeps trying to stall us out with Rest, but we break through eventually. Piloswine comes out next, but I roar him away because fighting Dewgong last seems to always go poorly. Some weirds make Brick Break into a 1-hit on Dewgong. We burn Piloswine to weaken Ice Fang, but it freezes, but we thaw out immediately. 2x special defenses and a Shaka Berry make Mud Bomb weak enough that we can last a reasonable amount of time. We take him down in only 2 Brick Breaks thanks to Burn Chip. In the case that Seal used Icy Wind to make us slower, we would still be okay here because Mud Bomb could only do up to 24 damage. Oh. Hi Petrel. What you got there? Oh. Bayleaf is simply too weak for this fight, so Meganium comes out. The smokescreen spam is too much for any regular move to be reliable, so our only attacking move is Magical Leaf, which does decent damage despite being resisted. To help tank sludges, I use Synthesis and Light Screen, and in case of any self-destructs, or explosions, Substitute to mitigate the damage. This marks the first and only time anyone scores above par. Croconaw does a predictable Aerial Ace sweep. Quilava uses Swift instead because it does more damage. Bayleaf gets it together a bit for the next rival fight. His team doesn't change much between fights, so you already know the drill. Body Slam for Golbat and Quilava, Rock Smash for Sneasel and Magnemite, and Iron Tail for Haunter, who thankfully comes out last. Croconaw has significant trouble with Meganium specifically, so Feraligatr has to take the reins. Ice Fang for Golbat and Meganium. Meganium sets up Reflect, then fails to KO us with a Petal Dance thanks to a Rindoberry, and then we immediately remove Reflect with a Brick Break on Magnemite, then a Bite on Haunter and Brick Break on Sneasel. Let me tell you right now, Agility plus Sword Stance equals win. If you think Feraligatr is a bad starter, you are a fool. Quilava has a hell of a time. Golbat gets burned, and while he's chipped down, we set up defense curls as we didn't bother investing in physical defense. Feraligatr's water gun has to be a 3-hit. We burn him as well, and he gets himself stuck in Thrash while we're on low health, so he doesn't accomplish much. We also use some digs to rack up more burn chip. Haunter successfully curses us when we're down to only 2 bag items, but it's all fine because we KO him with Flame Wheel and then the last 2 are easy. Flame Wheel on Sneasel and Dig on Magnemite, both 1 hit. It was shortly after that battle that I added the bag item limit and the move restrictions like I mentioned earlier. Now that they're there, we're back to doing every mandatory fight. Team Rocket is still Team Rocket, and Quilava does the best and Bayleaf does the worst, unsurprisingly. While Archer's Pokemon have the highest levels and IVs of any Pokemon fought thus far, he's definitely easier than the last rival fight because everyone is back to their second stages. Bayleaf starts by hitting some intentionally unboosted body slams on Houndour. The second of the 2 30% dice rolls pays off and paralyzes him. I go to +4 attack and then finish him off with an Ancient Power. No Omni Boost, but that's fine. Since he was paralyzed, we outsped and did not get hit with a Fire Fang as we go into Coughing. We one-hit Coughing anyway. We barely tank one Fire Fang from Houndoom, then paralyze with another Body Slam. At this point, I can outspeed and win instantly, but for some reason I decided to heal twice before doing that. I don't really know. Aqua Jet one-hits Houndour. Crocona's experience was deliberately chosen so that we would end up at level 21, which would mean we can survive 2 sludges from Coughing. But then Archer sends out Houndoom second. Fine by me. Coughing looks like a 3-hit, but he uses Haze at the last minute and now Aqua Jet does basically nothing. I use one more Swords Dance, then use Flail. With that health, Flail's power is 100, which was probably just barely enough to KO. Quilava doesn't have any standout counters to Archer's team, and in case you haven't noticed, no attack boosting moves as of yet. Except Sunny Day, I guess, but not really the time for that. Because of that, this is another fight Quilava starts at a notably high level. We start off with a lot of defense curls, then use Dig on Houndour. Our high defense causes Archer to send in Coughing, a special attacker. Coughing uses Haze and I use Will-O-Wisp. I start setting up defense again as Coughing keeps burning up. He uses Haze again, but I don't mind. I use one more defense curl, then Dig as this jerkface uses Haze again and then faints from the burn. Houndoom comes out and misses a feint attack as Quilava is still underground. Dig hits and does almost 50%. Bite does plenty and I'm all out of bag items to use, so this Dig has to count. Nicely done, little buddy. Ace Trainer Lola is our first Dragon-type trainer. It's a pretty standard Swords Dance sweep for Bayleaf, except on Dragonair we use a Dragon-type Natural Gift to one-hit. Oh yes, get ready for the era of Natural Gift. Crocodile has an easy time with Ice Punch, which is new with Jinx and Delibird in Ice Path. Quilava is weak to Aqua Tail and doesn't have any great responses to Dragon types. Dratini is easy to set up on, but we're just barely surviving 2 Dragon Rages from Dragonair at 84 HP. We have to use Smokescreen to buy some extra turns. Even though Dragonair has Shed Skin, a burn will do a fair amount of damage over a few turns, so we try to get a burn off. Dragonair misses Dragon Rage and Quilava misses Will-O-Wisp. Dragonair misses Dragon Rage and Quilava misses Will-O-Wisp. Dragonair misses Dragon Rage and Quilava finally lands Will-O-Wisp. Eventually, Dragonair blows through all of its Dragon Rage PP and its other attacks do pretty much nothing. Even though we miss our last 2 Fire Blasts, a burn ensures the win. With Claire, the fully evolved forms all come back out, and now things get a bit awkward because oftentimes the second stagers could win some of the upcoming battles if they were lucky enough, but the final stagers tear through them easily. Bayleaf is definitely too weak for Claire, but Meganium beats her comfortably. The Gyarados has no good way to stop us as we set up to +5 attack. With a bunch of Leech Seed chip in tow, Gyarados faints to 1 Body Slam. Out comes one Dragonair, who uses Thunder Wave and then Fire Blast, which is really the only move I'm worried about. An Aqua Berry reduces its damage down to just under a quarter. An Earthquake one-hits it. Then Claire sends out Kingdra. I'm a bit worried about a potential Hyper Beam, but it never happens and a few Earthquakes KO Kingdra and waste a Hyper Potion from Claire. Shortly after that, the second Dragonair goes down too. Croconaut is very close to pulling it off, but you need some considerable luck. Ice Punches for Gyarados and both Dragonair and a Dragon-type Natural Gift one-hits Seadra, all before they could do anything. Typhlosion. Oh boy. Typhlosion has basically no good attacks against Claire's team. They all resist fire, one of them quad resisting. Intimidate from Gyarados plus no way to increase attack aside from X attacks means physical attacks are pretty much not gonna happen. As for special attacks that are not fire, you have Hyper Beam, Swift, Solar Beam, Focus Blast, and Extrasensory. Not exactly amazing options. Maybe I should have given Swift a chance in hindsight, but I didn't. Instead, stall Typhlosion. We start off with a Will-Wisp on Gyarados. Then we start spamming Defense Curls, which will take the edge off the Aqua Tail Dragonair. We also use Rest whenever we're getting too low. I use a few X special defenses to prep for Kingdra's Hydro Pump. Using items does not count down the sleep timer, so after that I have to use a full restore. The burn has chipped Gyarados down enough to make Claire use a Hyper Potion. Better now than later. Eventually I'm down to my last bag item, another full restore. From here on out, it's all rest, and thankfully Gyarados has evidently run out of Dragon Rage PP. The only way she can touch us now is a crit. Gyarados goes down eventually, and then Kingdra comes out. Hydro Pump does. Oh wow, we didn't even need the Pasho Berry. We use some smoke screens on Kingdra and then burn her. Kingdra returns the favor with some smoke screens of her own. Eventually she's out of Hydro Pumps and starts using Hyper Beam. We tank one decently well and I rest on the recharge turn. Kingdra keeps going for Hyper Beam and... that was a 25% chance to KO. Typhlosion will wake up the next turn, meaning we're free to rest again. Now it's just down to the two Dragonair. Aqua Tail also does next to nothing. We burn Dragonair even though it has Shed Skin because that's our only way to do damage. Will-O-Wisp and Smokescreen, rinse and repeat. Shed Skin cures the burn, but we just burn her again. Eventually she's whittled down to 0 HP and the last Dragonair comes out. Same routine again, but this time we don't even have to worry about a crit Aqua Tail because this one has Fire Blast. Although, the Smokescreen from Kingdra finally catches up to us. Typhlosion blows through its 9 remaining Will-O-Wisp PP without a single hit. Come on man, those odds aren't that bad. Since we have renewable PP ups from the lottery corner, we can easily win basically any PP war. Several minutes later, Dragonair starts struggling. Claire pulls out a full restore, but it changes nothing and the last Dragonair faints after a few more turns. I should probably restrict rest in the same way as all those other moves, but considering that the only other people on the internet who have won this battle with Typhlosion got lucky with crits, burn stalled as well, or did it at friggin' level 52, I'm gonna let it slide. There's a random guy in Dragon's Den that hits specifically fire and water super effective and not grass. The Chikorita line scores big on him. And now, the Kimono Girls. 5 battles, each against a Generation 1 or 2 evolution, all of them back to back. No chance to heal or anything, and any setup we do is lost between battles. Each starter's score is mostly defined by the one battle where they have a bad matchup. Meganium uses Light Screen to halve the damage of Flareon's Fire Blast, which makes it 3-hit instead of 2-hit. Leech Seed chips it down slowly, and we have to hope the RNG works out with Grass Whistle so that Flareon will be asleep on the turn after Light Screen runs out. There is also Aurora Beam on Vaporeon, but it's not nearly as strong. The best Feraligatr can do to survive Jolteon's Thunderbolt is an X Special Defend, except that when the time came for that I forgot to use it, but it ended up working out because Jolteon went Double Team turn 1. Sure, whatever. Whatever happens during the Jolteon battle, Quilava has to come out of it with at least half health. Despite Jolteon using Double Team, we get him down to -3 accuracy before missing at all. We both miss for several turns in a row before I hit a Will-O-Wisp. From here, we just have to stall him out. Some digs help. Jolteon faints and Quilava levels up to level 36, just in time to evolve for Vaporeon. Thanks to an X Special Defend on turn 1, Surf is a 3-hit. From there, it's a typical stall out. It's very cool to see an evolution happen that way, however, Meganium still won. By taking a certain path to Whirl Islands, we can avoid all trainers along the way. Lugia does not count for score. While Quilava and Croconaw scored the same on Ace Trainer Gavin, it was a lot more trouble for Quilava. In theory, Quilava should be able to do it starting at level 20, but the amount of RNG is just really rough. Gavin's Kingler has Guillotine. Recall that one-hit KO moves are more likely to hit on lower level Pokemon, so they're apparently potentially a real pain for level golf. Fortunately, we can dodge one with a Focus Sash. We've had access to one Focus Sash from our mom since way back, but now that we have 8 badges, we can also get them from the Winner's Path Pokewalker course. but we need to have full health to actually use it, and we would rather waste as few turns as possible healing once Kingler comes out. So to be sure we enter at full health, probably, we use a lot of smokescreen on the lead victory bell. We also have to avoid a special defense drop from acid, otherwise Bubble Beam will 2-hit instead of 3-hit. Smokescreen buys us breathing room, as otherwise there's nothing stopping Bubble Beam spam. Kingler just misses every guillotine. The Flareon in the back can flinch us with bite or lower accuracy with sand attack, a ridiculous move that shouldn't exist. Neither of those things happens though, and we just dig it to death. In case he did use sand attack, we had Aerial Ace. For the final rival battle, Typhlosion debuts as an opponent and is Meganium's main threat since it has to tank both Lava Plume and Flame Wheel. An X Special Defend weakens Lava Plume enough that Typhlosion sticks to Flame Wheel. I set up easily on Sneasel and then one-hit it and Golbat. As Typhlosion comes in, we're too weak to survive a Flame Wheel, so we have to heal, and then he crits, so we have to heal again, putting us down to one bag item left. Even with a burn, Earthquake one-hits Typhlosion and then Magneton. Healing on the turn Haunter comes in is not ideal because he has Curse. After a Shadow Ball and a self-hit from Confusion, we're below 50%, and then he curses us. A Psychic-type natural gift was meant to cleanly KO, but whatever. Kadabra sets up Reflect, but since it's a Kadabra, Earthquake still one-hits. Feraligatr has an easy time. Set up, then 2-hit on Meganium with Ice Fang as it sets up a Reflect that accomplishes nothing. Magneton, Earthquake. Haunter, Freshly Learned Crunch, Kadabra, Crunch, and Golbat, Ice Fang. Quillava's setup is quite simply Sunny Day. In spite of that, Feraligatr still prefers Waterfall, which on the first hit is weakened even further by a Pasho Berry and then a burn to make it permanent. We slowly chip him down with a dig thrown in to avoid some damage. Haunter complies very nicely with us as we 2-hit. Even with a Sun Up, that's not a 1-hit. For multiple reasons, it's best we start off with Will-O-Wisp on Kadabra. He disables our flamethrower, but we got him burned, so at least the turn wasn't a waste. We hit him once with Dig, but then he gets a crit Psybeam, which makes 4 heals we've had to use. And then one of them confuses Quillava too. I set up Sunny Day, 2-hit Golbat, and then 1-hit Magneton. No confusion hits. Gotta say, an impressive performance. And finally, we've arrived at the Pokemon League. Since there are 6 party slots, we can carry in a different Pokemon for each of the league members. Also, I decided it would be best to make the level cap for each member be the highest level of all the Pokemon in the league, which is Lance's Dragonite at level 50. And when we fail, I load a save and use rare candies to continue gaining experience. Meganium sets up Sword Stance, during which Xatu U-turns into Jinx. We hit Jinx with Body Slam and Paralyzer. Thanks to that, we can set all the way up and KO her at full health. Xatu uses me first and copies our natural gift, which does nothing since Xatu is not holding anything. Our natural gift is Ghost type and it's a 25% chance to one-hit, but either way we were fine. The second Xatu uses Confuse Ray, but we break through to paralyze yet another Pokemon. The Citrus Berry recovery puts her back to just about the amount of damage we did to her, but whether we hit that range or not is unimportant because we snap out of confusion and crit her. Executor sets up Reflect and actually outspeeds, but not for long as we get another paralysis. Executor tries 3 separate times to hit Hypnosis and they all miss. Will uses a full restore, but we paralyze her again the turn after. Reflect wears off and Executor falls. Body Slam does half to Slowbro, but she sets up a curse. So we crit her. Buddy, you did not have to do all that. Feraligatr. Typhlosion finally gets with the times and can now learn Howl, thanks to an event Charmander. We couldn't use that before because it was level 40. And yes, I've looked. There's no other way to get Howl at this point because Houndour is post-game only because Game Freak. Xatu makes herself perfectly easy to set up on as she keeps going for me first almost every turn. From there, it's a dead simple sweep. On Koga, Meganium has a pretty uneventful sweep until the end when Koga tries to stall with Forretress, but it never happens. He never goes for Explosion because it's his last Pokemon, so it's really just wasting time. For Feraligatr, there was a bit of concern about taking a Swift from Forretress followed by a Gunk Shot from Muck, but this didn't come true at all because they both pretty much threw. Typhlosion does a rollout sweep without a second thought. For Bruno, Feraligatr and Typhlosion mainly rely on Aerial Ace. Meganium does a kind of weird and slow sweep where we have to stop on Hitmonchan to set Reflect up after it's gone down once. If you thought Koga's team was unfriendly to Meganium, get a load of Karen. Her double teaming Umbreon is annoying, but once we hit it with one Leech Seed, it's sure to faint eventually and we can set up in the meantime. The Murkrow will try to use Whirlwind. Since we're in the Pokemon League and I actually have to bring each Pokemon along with me, it will actually work. Since that would break the whole one Pokemon per battle rule, I decided that getting switched out would mean an instant loss. Fortunately, we can one-hit the Murkrow with Body Slam. Ingrain was also a possible choice. Thanks to a single X speed, we outspeed Houndoom and one hit with Earthquake. Vileplume catches us when we're low and locks herself into Petal Dance. Nice. Vileplume also had Acid, which would have been much more damaging and could possibly lower our special defense, which would be really bad against Gengar. Gengar's only meaningful move is Focus Blast, which does just over half our health. It actually shouldn't, cause I really overestimated how much attack investment I needed. Anyway, since neither Body Slam nor Earthquake can hit Gengar, we just have to slowly chip him down with Leech Seed. Razor Leaf would have also worked well enough, but I just didn't use it for whatever reason. Oh, whatever. Even if I fixed those mistakes, I think it would have been the same score anyway. Focus Blast is a 3-hit once we factor in Leech Seed, and even weaker after an X special defense, so all's well. And now, Lance. You probably don't need to be told, this is not where Meganium shines. Almost every one of his Pokemon covers grass, and the one that doesn't has Thunder Wave. Because of that, Meganium starts this battle at an eye-watering level 47. We set all the way up with Swords Dance even though we get intimidated, and use 2 X speeds to outspeed Aerodactyl. This setup was made possible by Leech Seed. Thank you. One Dragonite uses Thunder Wave on us, but our Lumberry that really should have been a Cherry Berry cures the paralysis. Against Aerodactyl, we settle for Razor Leaf over Iron Tail because there's no way to breed them both onto Meganium as far as I can tell. The second Dragonite knows Outrage, which is a tight 3-hit, but in this attempt he goes Safeguard first, so that was easy. The last Dragonite uses Thunder Wave again, but otherwise doesn't really do much. I take him slow just in case something bad happens. Gyarados forces Feraligatr into using 1% of its total power because we finally invest a bit in defense. After a not-so-fun setup, we still sweep through all the same. Waterfall and Ice Fang one-hit all of Lance's Pokemon except Gyarados. Seriously, 2/3 of the battle were just Gyarados. Feraligatr maintains its streak of starting battles at level 30 all the way to the end, which started right after the Kimono Girls. Remember how hard Claire was for Typhlosion? Yeah, this is hardly any better no matter how you look at it. Waterfall from Gyarados and Rock Slide from Aerodactyl are a tough combo. Will-O-Wisp is our best shot at keeping them at bay. Aerodactyl's first Rock Slide triggers our Chardy Berry, but also causes a flinch. We tank the next Rock Slide, but Will-O-Wisp misses. I knew that would happen, so that's why I made sure Rock Slide is a 3-hit from full health. After healing, we finally connect, and after healing again, we take him out with one Rock Slide of our own. The rest of Lance's team is not terribly threatening. Outrage from Dragonite is a strict 3-hit, and Charizard gets one flinch on us at the final stretch, but we make it through. So, now what? In case this video goes nowhere, I'd like to not invest any more time into it than I already have, so I won't do Kanto. This is the end. In first place, we have the Totodile line with 1047.5 points. Totodile had a respectable early and mid-game with some trouble on the Ekritique rival, Jasmine, and HQ Ariana, before pulling way ahead in the late game with Feraligatr's access to both Agility and Swords Dance, or if you're feeling spicy, Dragon Dance, a move which didn't actually appear in this video on account of it being hard to breed. In second place, the Chikorita line with 1080.5 points, 33 above Totodile. Its early game setbacks were greatly exaggerated, only racking up 3.5 extra points before quickly making up for it post-daycare. Chikorita went back and forth with Totodile for the lead, with victories on Morty and Ariana, and a lot of them post-Claire, but Feraligatr was still too much. And in third, Cyndaquil with 1116 points, 35.5 above Chikorita and 68.5 above Totodile. Cyndaquil had a fleeting victory on the Ekritique rival, followed by a tie with Totodile on Morty, and then after Chuck, it never really recovered. It was beating Chikorita after Petrol, during which time it did almost take the lead, but went back to third after all the Dragon-type trainers. Cyndaquil tied or nearly tied Chikorita on many fights, notably Price, Archer, the Victory Road Rival, and much of the Pokemon League, all of those being fights Totodile won. Whatever you think of the Johto starters, they are controversial. What do I mean by that? What? I am a Chikorita stan, which is funny because Chikorita did not win. But despite this video's title, that wasn't the point. All I wanted to show is that every starter has its strengths, and I think I've done that. Even I have strengths? Yes, even you. You're just not being represented properly due to the specific battles that ended up getting cut. There is a strong case to be made for Cyndaquil yet, after we consider all of the Team Rocket fights that were cut. We skipped over quite a few poison types. Cyndaquil just might be able to come back on Chikorita, though I don't expect a complete reversal of the course. With that said, should anyone care about this video, here's my roadmap for the future. I think I should make a video taking each of the starters versus some new species one-on-one. Which? I don't know. During those videos, I'll redo the cut battles for the starters. This way we can keep things fresh with some new faces while also seeing how other Pokemon perform to get a better frame of reference for just how good or bad a score really is, because right now we have no idea how the starters themselves compare to anybody else. Is this score good? Is this one bad? Are they all good or all bad? We don't actually know yet. Everything is still up in the air, so just tell me whatever you think. If you want to try level golfing for yourself, I have a second document linked in the description that links to the things that helped me do this project. There's a lot that goes into it. This can be a very fun way to play the game if you're the right kind of person for it. Any battle can become a challenging one that necessitates at least a bit of thinking. The video now ends.